Interview with Bernie Gonzalez, Part 2, Take 2. Hey, it's Patrick Coyle, artist in progress, and I suck at talking shop with other creators. So today is Part 2, Part 2, Dos. Part 2 of my conversation with writer-artist Bernie Gonzalez, the creator of Midnight Mystery. In this round, we talk about knowing your limits, figuring out your personal goals, the benefits of self-publishing, why social media is important, and being authentic in your self-marketing. And I almost choke and die. Let's get to it. Hey, really quick, before we get into it with Bernie, if you like watching videos of artists and creators talking shop and want more of it, please consider hitting the subscribe button and clicking the bell so you can be notified when my new releases hit the streets. The digital streets of the information super highway? If you're over 40, you probably know what that is. In my day, we didn't call it the internet. No! All right. One of the things that I appreciate about your work as well is that you, at least per page, you work with a very refined, simple palette and make a lot of the colors really pop. So there's a lot of contrast. It's really good for the eye. I mean, I'm kind of flipping through one of the books right now, and you know, the eye registers maybe 3 colors, maybe 4, but with some tones within the same color. So
I try to do that on purpose. There's a smarter people that have done this that you should go on YouTube and find. Guillermo del Toro comes to mind immediately, where I think I would probably consider myself a colored geek if he's not like a colored genius. But the idea of using like continuous colors, triadic colors, and there's certain subconscious things that you can create that, again, that's why it's subconscious. But if you have certain color patterns, they just evoke sci-fi. They evoke supernatural. And if you go to those colors, it's no different than like if you're trying to create a sense of royalty, we'll try purple because there's something in our brain, maybe because of pop culture, because of the way our lizard brain thinks, I don't know, that says like purple must be elevated, and thus I will now use this, you know, to convey that. And those are just shortcuts that I want to embrace because I don't want to just kind of take too much color on the page to saturate it. I want to do that quick shorthand to say, all right, blue sky, a few little dots, that's the stars, that's enough. All right, well, let me see how quickly, just in drawing it, how quickly I can also convey the colors for the page as well. So
sure,
I do colors quite a lot, and sometimes it's more adding a lot and taking things away and realizing that maybe a yellow and a blue, which are very complementary to each other, you know, will probably get across what I want. And instead of using like a light blue highlight, the yellow is more dynamic. You know, and this is, again, not something that other people have done more successfully in their work than I have. But I think it's definitely, if you are a creator, whatever part of the realm you're in, it's always something to explore a little bit, because you realize the power that color has. Like you said, Dave Stewart does so much to complement Mike Mignola's work, but it's very thoughtful work that he's putting in to not be the bass guitar that goes too over, like the vocals. If not, it just drowns everything out. You realize this. I know what these pencils, what these inks look like, but this airbrush highlighting from the 90s is taking so much away from it that it's kind of, you know, taking it to another place. So.
Totally. No, I think that's dead on. So you mentioned, or we talked about earlier, about how long, you know, Midnight Mystery has been in the works. What did you ever do? So you're self-publishing now. Did you ever work for another publisher? Have you ever done freelance work? Like, how did you get to self-publishing?
So the short version, and I don't know if such a version exists for me, so sorry.
That's why you're here.
So about mid-2000s, I start drawing this, like I said, this World War II thing, and I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's kind of a cool story that I want to tell. And it was in 2005 that I went to San Diego for this contest called the Comic Book Challenge.
Oh yeah.
And okay, so I
was there. I was there for that one. Yeah.
Oh, you were for 2005?
Yeah, we had Comic Works had a booth there.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so it's possible I may have seen you.
It's certainly possible.
Yeah. Very possible. So we were, a friend and I submitted our book, and you know, we were in front of Mark Silvestri, Gail Ann Hurd, and a few other industry folks, and it was like on NBC, and it was a neat experience, but that's what it was. I mean, we didn't win, but the experience of working with essentially like a pitch and trying to refine that and realizing this is what the industry looked like. I think I knew early on that kind of what you mentioned before, I wasn't Jim Lee, but I very much knew I was never going to get there either.
Okay.
So, but I could use some of these other skill sets that I had in marketing and communicating to maybe take a, not necessarily a great book, right? Like, I'm like, all right, if I'm going to draw this, it's not going to be great, but maybe I can sell the story, the behind it, and maybe that'll get some legs and that'll get some recognition.
Okay.
So that's kind of what started to really get me into like the idea of self-publishing and realizing, well, I could probably release some of this stuff through like vanity printers and having to kind of figure out what that looked like. And I was still kind of refining like, what's my story? Because now I think I know how to sell it, and I think I know how to print it. Now I just have to spend the time to make it. And that's honestly what took a long time, and probably around like 2010, maybe around there. I was online. At that point I had a website, and same website as now, and I was selling PDFs of some of the very early versions of Midnight Mystery that probably only a few friends and family have ever seen, because they were also the only people that bought them. So,
I know how that goes.
That's right. After those like very 12 gracious orders of people where I'm like, I recognize all these names. It's like, this is very kind, guys, but I think I'll be happier when I see a total stranger buy an order. That'll be interesting. And I think oh, you okay?
Sorry, I just got water down the wrong pipe.
It's okay. The story gets a lot of people verklempt. I understand.
It was very emotional for me.
It's all right. I understand. Comics will do this.
I was just trying to sneak in a little tiny sip of water.
There you go.
I'm so sorry to derail this.
You should absolutely keep all of this in there.
Oh, I definitely will. Well,
good.
You probably noticed I put some bloopers in the front.
Yeah.
So this part will probably go in the beginning.
Perfect. Keep this in there. And at this point, Patrick breaks into tears.
Oh my God. Oh, your story is so moving.
There you go. Just use that part where it kind of cleans up everything.
That's right.
That's good.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
No. I'm trying to think. So website, PDFs, and there was an agent who had reached out to me, and he had bought all the PDFs. I think at that point I had like 4 or 5 stories on there, and he liked what I was doing. Mm-hmm. He kind of saw the pulp noir influences that I was going for, the Hammer horror, Svengoolie, just everything that was in there. And we had a phone conversation, and I'm like, okay, like this feels right. Like I think I'm talking to someone who gets what I'm doing. And he was very transparent, and again, working in the world of comics, you could almost do separate episode series on the legalese of comics, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And at that point, that felt good. It felt like this is someone who's being honest, authentic, has best interest, and maybe best of all, seems to be able to see what I'm trying to do. And our first project that we wound up doing, and I pulled this out earlier with the intention of showing it, was this here. So this is the Italian version of the first Midnight Mystery story, which was in Italian, La naturalezza della bestia. That's my worst Italian I can do. But Nature of the Beast was the first one. And this hasn't come out in the current iteration of Midnight Mystery, but they were able to take my artwork, which at the time looks a little different than what it does now. Mm-hmm. But you can kind of see some of the noir heavy ink line influences that were in there.
Sure.
They took the script, actually took my hand-drawn balloons that I put in there and put everything in Italian. You can kind of even see in the back what Ezekiel King was before the version he is now. Like he's there in his present form, just not yet. Like you can almost see him there. And it was a good experience because working with the publisher that this agent was able to facilitate this relationship with, understanding the idea of foreign rights, contracts, translating and realizing that some things don't translate. So saying that, the client feels like she has a chip on her shoulder. Okay, well, I have to figure out how to say that in maybe a clearer way, because that may not translate to another language.
Yep.
So that was a fun experience. And then actually having something in my hand was probably the best, the best ending for that story.
Sure.
Then I could see how my work translated, if at all, to print. Mm-hmm. And, of course, as an artist, you only see the mistakes. Whereas other people are encouraging and they're like, wow, this is great. And I'm like, but then on page 17 and then panel 3 and then on 18, and I can't do that again.
Right.
And it was good for that. Unfortunately, then that agent passed away.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it was very sudden, very tragic, and just someone who I thought could be a really good advocate for not only what I was doing, but also I thought someone who had a lot of camaraderie, like, oh, maybe we can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
But, outside of that and the tragedy that was, I just kind of realized, okay, so what do I do now?
Right.
So the Italian publisher and I kind of like settled everything out on our own, where they're like, hey, we're doing your book. We were going to do a series. We weren't able to sell as many as we thought we could. So, we're just going to call it here. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of don't even know what to do. Like, I'm not sure how this is supposed to work anymore. So, I have a stack of these around. That's probably, one of the nice things, but it was a learning experience to learn kind of like, okay, how does this work? And you start meeting other people in the industry, and what is this like, and tragedy aside, it was good to find someone that, like, I felt was not related to me, or someone that I'd gone to college with, that could see what I was trying to do and could kind of like look down the road with me and say, I think I know where you're going and I think I can help. And Michael his name was Michael Hudson. He'd worked with Dark Horse on like some Edward Burroughs Tarzan stories and Sherlock Holmes. So it's like we had a good mind meld regarding like our influences and things that we'd grown up enjoying. So after that didn't work out, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay quiet for a while and just like make some comics. But again, I'm not Jim Lee, so I'm not going to do any tryout pages for Marvel or DC. Right. I'm not going to pitch anything to Image. I don't feel like I need to do that. And it wasn't until I found a publisher that started a newsprint line, and I thought that was kind of neat. So I pitched that. It went really well, and able to see my comics in newsprint kind of like satisfied the kid in me that would roll them up and like put them in the back pocket on my bike. And
sure,
that was neat to kind of see that. But I think because of that, it allowed me to now start actually developing a fan base. And I started to kind of see if kind of thinking back to music, before I was playing in the garage, and maybe like the neighbor would walk by and be like, you sound good. That's it.
Right.
Now with, going through Diamond, working with comic shops to try to promote, going to local comic shops in my area to try to schedule signings, I could actually, it's like playing in a small bar, and then slowly realizing that, oh, people react to this comic or this story this way. Maybe I should try this, or they don't like this. Maybe I won't try that, or I really like that. I better try to do it better because I obviously didn't sell it well enough. And then seeing my work in print, online, seeing how people were talking about it. That's when, that was all like 2017 to like 2019 or so. And that kind of brought me to the self-publishing world now. So for now, I just publish everything on my own, all of Midnight Mystery, and just go through all the logistics of making that happen.
Okay. And are things kind of building for you? Are you seeing some growth?
Yeah, I think you were kind enough to order Volume 1, which came out in late 2020. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Wife thanks you too. So, and that's where we were kind of talking about that a little bit before, the mechanics of making comics, which is not always transparent when people talk about it. Some people are more apt to talk about their brushes than they are about the money that's involved in making some of this stuff. Right. So I'm happy to be transparent about it. I'm working now with a printer, Comics Wellspring. They're out of Michigan, and I'd seen them in different artist alleys by virtue of just other artists who had used their printing services before. And I liked the product. It felt right. It looked right. The colors looked really good. So I thought that my work would translate well on their paper and because of their printing process. So using them has been a godsend because it's outside of calibrating some things on my own, realizing that I can use more vibrant colors. I can get, it's less being gun shy about using colors, but rather realizing I can use brighter colors and more effects if I need to, because I can rely on the printer to take what I have on my monitor and be able to replicate it on the page.
Sure. Sure.
So once you find a good printer, you have a great dance partner, and then it's really on you to do something with your work. So, then I went back to all the stories that I'd created at that point, remastered some of them, just times where I knew I could draw maybe the sky a little better now. I could go back and render that and give a little bit more mood, added a few more pages, and quite a lot of pages. And a lot of it was all character building, those things that wound up on the cutting room floor where if I'm working with the limits of a 32 page, I have to respect the publisher who has to put in ads and has to add advertisements for also other work. Like, all right, well, I really don't have 30 some pages, but I have some, so I have to maybe leave that 4 or 5 page piece scene out where Zeke King, the main character, interacts with like his neighbor, and we get to see a little bit more about his life and his background, what his day-to-day is like when he's not hunting ghosts or having an encounter with the supernatural. It's like, oh, well, I want to keep it, but no. Well, now self-publishing, I can keep that scene and I can even expand on it and just make sure that if it's interesting, if it supports the story, then it's worth keeping. So let me try that.
Okay.
So I did a small print run, and that came out around Halloween of 2020. Like I said, you were kind enough to be one of the first people to buy it. And in 2 weeks, I was able to make on my own what I'd made in 2 years working with a publisher.
Oh, wow.
So, and again, the price ranges, it was not apples to apples. So it was very different. But just, not, I guess going back to that idea of the, Michael Jackson, Madonna, you sell a CD for 20 and they get $1. Well, I'm the guy in the back alley selling Midnight Mystery out of a crate and being able to keep the whole thing.
Right.
And, having just a really understanding wife and partner who understands, hey, if we take $300 or $400 to pay for the small print run, then if we have a small dedicated audience of people that are willing to kind of buy this, then we're not sitting on pallets of unsold merchandise in the garage.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I can kind of keep this flywheel going that if I can sell 100, 200 copies, what I get from some of that, if I don't go buy a Lamborghini or something, as comic artists would do.
Oh, yeah.
We all have Lamborghinis. That's just a little known fact that few people know about.
I think Jim Lee actually has a Lamborghini, but other than him, you hardly ever say.
He should. He should. But think about things like that. It's like, yeah, you got to take the money, and I use it as a flywheel to fund the production of volume 2 and 3. So just kind of keeping that going, so that way it becomes a bit more self-sustaining.
That makes sense. So how did you kind of get the word out? I mean, we talked about before, you've got a website, you've got, you're on Instagram. I assume you're on Twitter as well?
All the above, yeah. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I try to keep it simple and just on all of them, it's at I Want Mystery.
Okay.
So that way there's something less. I think with a lot of this stuff, comics should not be divorced from like really basic principles of marketing. Where if you can say something simply and you can convey that very simply to an audience, it's that much easier for them to retain it.
Sure.
So keeping frequent postings. You're going to go out to eat on a Friday with your family, and maybe your wife says, hey, like, let's check out this restaurant. You'll do what most people might do if you've never been there. Check the reviews online, see if they have a Facebook post, and next thing you know, you see that their latest post was from 2 years ago. Natural reaction maybe, are these guys still open?
Right.
Like, I'm not sure. And I think that's because the world of comics is so esoteric that we'll sit here in our caves making these things for X amount of time, and we're constantly working, but we're constantly working towards 120-page graphic novel that could take a year or so to make. So if you're not posting about late night movies and what you're doing, you know, the things that you're as a human, like that's what your night is while you're also drawing. I think that's where social media is great, because it provides a little bit of the personality of what the person is doing. And then maybe in a case like you see it and you're like, your art's okay. I'm like, I'd agree, it's just okay. But I love the Ultraman stuff that you're watching. That's kind of cool, because I remember watching that as a kid.
Yep.
And maybe that buys us a little bit of connection, where you're like, oh yeah, I think this guy grew up watching the same shows and movies I did. I bet some of that is probably in the thing he's making. And
right.
And that's the connection. I mean,
sure.
that's really what it is.
And just for the record, for the people watching, I did not tell Bernie that I just thought his art was he's just using that as an example.
It worked.
It did. I mean, I think you and I have very similar sensibilities. So, you know, not only the artists that you have influenced, a lot of the stuff that you post that you're watching at night as your movies or your TV shows and that kind of thing. And I think that's a good way to gather an audience, right? So there are, for whatever you're into, there are other people out there. And it's a matter of putting the right hashtag on your posts to find them. And, you know, I've been doing this now for a little while, and I have not been good lately at putting up regular posts, but when I do, you know, you slowly trickle in some new followers, and that over time will build your audience.
I think that's it. I mean, that's if reality TV has taught us anything, and I don't know that it's taught us much, but it's taught us anything, it's that a certain sense of authentic vulnerability, where, you know, in the title of your series alone, I don't know that you suck at drawing, but in documenting your journey and getting back into drawing, in creating Biff Canon, in talking to other people in the industry, you know, I think, you know, I agree. Like, I think our sensibilities are probably really, really close, but seeing like your journey and going through this, you know, you're influencing someone else, whether you know it or not, where they're watching your series and kind of like tuning in to what you're trying to do. And it doesn't matter where they are, whether they're young and just starting to draw, or they've already had a career and they're just like, oh, here's Patrick doing this thing, and I know him or I knew him, this is kind of neat. But the fact that this is you, and we're able to see that, the Kevin Kelly idea of 1,000 true fans, like, you don't really need 10,000 people to watch your YouTube channel, but if you can get 500 or 600 people to watch it and buy in because you're authentic, right? That's the big part, is you have to, it has to be you. But if it's you, and you know, it's niche enough. I mean, I joke around like about microbrewers before, but I'm like, that's the point, right? You don't have to be Budweiser. You just have to make this really weird beer. And I'm not a beer drinker, but I get the principle behind it. You know, it's like you make this really specific thing, and you just get enough people to like it, and that's enough, hopefully, you know, to be able to allow you to do the thing that you love, and that's great. And I think because of that idea that you're doing with the series, I think it's, you know, it's like social media, same thing. If you share a little bit about yourself, you know, like what you're going through, you know, personal as much as you want to share, there's a vulnerability in that I think, you know, you can't exploit it, because I think that's the other part of it too. Like, we've seen so much of this now that we know bad reality TV, just like we know bad social media. So, you know, when someone's trying to play you for a feeling, because you're like, I've seen this before. But if someone's just like, hey, this is you know, the movie I'm watching on this Saturday afternoon, it's like, yeah, you're just sharing a little bit of who you are, and then hopefully that's as much of the work that you're creating that they're responding to, if that makes sense. I'm not sure.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you know, the idea about being true to yourself is important, right? So you don't want to just go on either on a YouTube channel like this or on your Instagram post and then just add 1,000 hashtags just on the chance that somebody's going to come in and be like, oh yeah, I did hashtag Mark Hamill. But your thing really doesn't have that much to do with it, but you know, you were just trolling for using that as the fishing term, not as the online term, just to pull in more folks, and people can smell that. They're like, oh, nah, this person they're not on it. This isn't really, I can feel this is ingenuine.
This is the equivalent of like standing at a corner and just yelling, Mark Hamill, and hoping that like someone's driving by being like, the guy from Luke Skywalker, and like, no, the guy who did the voice of the Joker. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll take a look at what you're posting, but not like, I'm not really interested in this. I was interested in the Mark Hamill thing. So
that's right. Exactly. So you did mention Patrick sucks at drawing. It was always intended to be more of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. But what would you say that you suck at? Is there an area of your skill set that you feel like needs work?
I'm still, I think, at that point where I'm still putting too much on the page.
Okay.
Like I think I've realized in one of the things that is very big, I don't know, just a reoccurring theme in a lot of my stuff is time. Maybe the lack of it. So like I knew with Midnight Mystery, like I do have, and it's almost within reaching distance. The last story is one of the first things I drew. So after doing Nature of the Beast, this one, and then realizing, all right, well, maybe that's not the first thing I should come out of the gate with. But I knew how it ended because it was, to be honest, it was a personal story. Like it was like, this is how that relationship ended for me. So I know that's Zeke, the main character, that's his journey. So I know how this kind of ends. But I knew I didn't want to do Midnight Mystery forever. Okay. So I knew if I gave myself a good beginning, but a definitive end, I knew how I would get there. What I really suck at is the in-between, where I feel like I am not at that place yet where I'm moving fast enough to, I feel like I'm being hypocritical in like, I know the pieces, like I know how this should work. I know how I should not spend time on that page because now I'm getting to the point of noodling, or I'm getting to the point of using Photoshop and coloring as a crutch when I should have paid more attention to composition. Because all you have to look is through any Alex Toth book and realize that like there may not be a lot of lines there, but I feel everything he was doing. And thinking of Bravo for Adventure, like up here, like some of the dog fights and the aerial cinematography he used is so efficient and successful at the same time that when I think of like a dog fight that I've done, and I'm trying to think, I'm like, all right, let me bring some receipts here. So this is the 150-page story that was the World War II thing. So
wow. This
is the beginning of the dogfight scene. You can even see I even wrote myself the Ghostland title page. So that is volume 4 of Midnight Mystery. And what I didn't know is that the spy that I was working on in here was actually, this was always the secret origin of Ezekiel King.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't know it was actually going to end up being the same character that I was working on this whole time.
Okay.
So in doing that, like, and I'll kind of flip through it a little faster, but realizing like, okay, here's this scene that I'm trying to set up. You see the bombers and the cool aerial shots where the plane is flying, and then the radio tower shots, and it just keeps going and going and going. And at this point, I've even lost myself because I'm like, what is going on with this? And then, of course, like, taking away the humanity of the Axis fighter pilots by giving them goggles, so that way they feel a little less human and maybe just more like the enemy.
Sure.
And like, man, like at this point, I've given myself carpal tunnel from doing this with all these pages. And then all I have to do is look at an Alex Toth page. There's a lot more. I'm
sure.
saving you from having to look at all these, but realizing, dear Lord, Alex Toth was able to do this so much better in a shorter amount of time, and he was able to pull it off. And I know it's maybe a harsh standard to look at, but that's definitely a case where I'm like, okay, like this represented like 2 years of my life.
Yeah.
And in probably, I don't know, I want to say in earnest, I probably started around New Year of this year, 2021. And I've been able to redraw 50 of these pages now in Procreate, which is where I work on. And I've been able to successfully tell the story much better than I did in that 2-year period. But I had to go through that 2 years. I had to do these pages.
Sure.
to get to where I'm at now. That's where I'm trying to get better. So maybe it doesn't take as long to get to that finishing place.
If Brad Pitt wants to talk to me, Brad Pitt can sit on hold for 2 minutes. No, we're in the middle of a show here. No, we're about to come back. The interview's almost... Oh, hey, hi, there you are. How'd you like my conversation with Bernie? I think he makes a lot of excellent points. Figuring out what your personal limitations are and then planning around that makes so much sense to me. And I love how Bernie is a true student of the medium, constantly looking and learning from masters like Toth. It's inspiring to me. But what do you think? Was there anything in our conversation that rang a bell for you? Let me know down in the comments, won't you? If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up so other people like you can find it. And if you'd like to watch more of my videos, take a look at the ones listed here. We've got part 1 of my conversation with Bernie, and I've got conversations with other artists you might like. And as always, remember this: you don't suck, you just think you do, and you're wrong. Keep drawing, writing, sculpting, playing the theremin, whatever, suckers. I'll see you next time. Peace!